Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I have Kute Blackson joining me, who's the author of The Magic of Surrender and You Are the One. So Kute Blackson, a beloved inspirational speaker and transformational teacher, he offers a fresh, bold look at spiritual awareness for a whole new generation. Born in Ghana, West Africa, Kute's multicultural upbringing as the child of a Japanese mother and a Ghanaian father has spanned 4 different continents. His unique lineage laid the foundation for his approach to breaking down barriers and unlocking an individual's true gifts and greatness. A transformational teacher, speaker, visionary guide, and national best-selling author of You Are the One, we're going to be talking about his new book that just came out, The Magic of Surrender. Kute, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So great to have you. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what led you to writing The Magic of Surrender?
Just overall, a bit about myself. Wow, I've been on the path since I can remember. My life's passion has been people and understanding why we do what we do as human beings. And so I was a very empathetic kid. I was born in Ghana, West Africa. Father's Ghanaian, mother's Japanese, grew up in London. So I was a very empathetic kid, and I would feel people's pain and feel people's suffering very deeply. And there was always a part of me that wanted to alleviate suffering in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know what that would look like. And so as a kid, I grew up in a kind of, shall we say, unusual environment. For me, it seemed normal, it seemed ordinary, and it's all I knew. My first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that this man walks on and wipes it on her face and stands up. So we could call that a miracle. I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear, and the same man whose sand she picked up would look at a person in a wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick, stand up." Or he would look at someone with crutches and would say, "Throw your crutches away, there's a power inside of you, like, do you believe?" And so week after week, as a young kid, I grew up seeing, you could say, these miracles occur, right? And so I didn't know any better because it just seemed normal to me. I thought this was everybody's reality. I came to realize it wasn't. And so I grew up with this sense of possibility, that everything was possible, nothing was impossible. And I think that really acted as a foundation for my life. And so this man was my father. And he built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, hundreds of thousands of followers in his congregation. He built a huge church in London. He was, let's say, the spiritual teacher to kings and presidents in the African continent. So age 8, I started speaking in my father's church. That's when my speaking career began. Age 14, I was ordained as a minister. And that began a whole new career path for me that I didn't know I was going to go down. But all of a sudden, my father announced one Sunday, my son is taking over. And he had all these plans for me, and a lot of hopes and dreams of everyone else were put on me. And when it was announced, I knew I wanted to help people, but I knew that something wasn't quite right. Something didn't feel right. Something didn't feel aligned. And my heart sank because I knew that this was not my path. This was not my destiny. This was not my purpose. And I think, like many of us, we allow fear to stop us. My fear was, if I really speak my truth, if I really be authentic, if I really reveal who I am, if I really tell my father how I really feel, then I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be outcast. I'm going to lose the relationship. And so I didn't say anything. I went along with it. For 4 years, I went through a tremendous inner conflict and inner turmoil of questioning, who am I and why am I and what am I here? What's my purpose? And depression, conflict, turmoil, questioning. And so when I turned 18, I think a lot shifted for me because I felt this huge calling in my soul to come to the US, to come to America. I felt this calling to go into the self-help personal growth field because a lot of the books on my father's bookshelf were of the people like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, and Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, and these sort of development icons. And so I grew up reading this, and that opened up for me a whole new way and possibility of, like, this is what I want to do. You mean I can inspire people without religion. I can inspire people without going into the church industry, so to speak. I can do it in a different way. And so I felt this huge calling to come to the US, a huge calling to inspire people in a whole different way. And I think sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense to your conscious mind or your logic, and what your soul guides you to do isn't always convenient. But the calling was so strong, it was so undeniable that I had to make a choice. And at 18, I looked into my future. And age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60, as I projected, I felt the deep pain of self-betrayal. I felt like I was committing a soul suicide, that I could be successful by everyone else's standards, but if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my truth, if I didn't have my soul, if I didn't have my integrity, then what kind of success is that? And that you can't really be truly fulfilled and happy being someone that you're not and living someone else's version for your life. And so I knew what I had to do. And I think my life really began, so to speak, that set me on a whole new path when I had that conversation with my father, the scariest thing for me, and confronted my fear, confronted him, told him I'm not taking over as an 18-year-old kid. Sure enough, we didn't speak for 2 years, and that was heartbreaking. It was challenging. It was difficult. It was terrifying. You know, sometimes people say when you find your purpose, hey, the universe opens up, everything flows. When I think sometimes when you find your purpose is when the challenges really begin, the difficulties really begin. To me, they're soul tests that we have to go through to prepare us to develop the mental, the emotional, the physical, the psychological muscle and soul force to be able to fulfill our true purpose. And so I had that conversation. I let everything go, and I was thrown into the unknown. And I really believe that when you follow your soul, that you will always end up in the right place. When you follow your soul and your true integrity, you may not take the route that you most expect, but you will end up in the right place at the right time with the right people. And I ended up winning a green card in the lottery, the green card lottery. And that brought me to the US, and that brought me to Los Angeles, and that took me into following my dreams. And I showed up in LA as an 18-year-old kid with 2 suitcases, $800 in my pocket, knew not one person in the States, and began my journey. Really began my journey, and found many of the teachers, the mentors, the authors that I read about, studied with some of them. And then a few years later, ended up traveling the world, and traveled to Thailand, studied with some monks, traveled to Israel, studied with some rabbis, all in a quest to try to understand who am I and the purpose of life. And, you know, as a kid, I really began to ask myself the questions from a very young age of, you know, I got a scholarship to a very prestigious school. I went to the school for free because I didn't come from a lot of money. And a lot of my friends and students in the school, they were sons of presidents and kings and royalty and politicians and people of influence. And yet they have every reason to be happy, but often their family and they were miserable. And in my father's congregation were folks that weren't that educated, you know, didn't have that much material resource, but seemed fulfilled and happy and grateful. And so as a kid, I started questioning a lot, like, who am I and why am I here? What's the purpose of life? Is it just to wake up, make money, you know, buy a house, go on vacation, buy a car, make babies, buy some clothes, and then die? Like, surely there has to be more to the purpose of life than that. And so this became my quest. And so that took me to India also in my early 20s. And that really transformed my life. And some experiences that happened for me in India kind of cracked my heart open to a deeper realization of who I am and the nature of life and why I'm here, my true purpose. And then I came back to the US and began helping people. It started simply one-on-one, and it just started over the years growing and evolving, and people began coming from around the world to work with me, and I developed my own way of working with people. I would always say I don't really coach people. I uncoach people from the patterns and the layers of conditioning that we develop from childhood. And I help people connect to the freedom of their own essence, their own being, and live that authentically in the world. And that's what happened. And it just expanded to larger groups and 2 best-selling books. And so that's the short version.
Good. That's amazing. Wow. What a journey you've had. That's so fantastic. So give us the meat of Magic of Surrender. Tell our listeners what it's about, what led you to write it.
Sure. The Magic of Surrender for me was not, it wasn't the book I thought I was going to write, to be honest. I had other plans. There were many other books I wanted to write. In fact, I sat down one day and took a whiteboard and stuck it to the wall. And there was a huge whiteboard, and I started to throw all sorts of ideas at this whiteboard, all sorts of ideas in terms of books I thought I should write, in terms of books I thought would be a bestseller, in terms of books I thought publishers would want, in terms of books I thought my audience would want, books I thought would make money, books I thought would be great marketing. And when I looked at the hundreds of ideas I came up with, none of those ideas really felt like in my integrity. None of those ideas felt true. None of those ideas felt authentic. And the only word on that whiteboard that stood out for me, the only word that stood out that was truly authentic was surrender. And I resisted, and I thought, hell no, I don't want to write about surrender. You know, it's like this thing that we know we should do, but we don't want to do. So we resist it. And, you know, the people want to hear about it. And yet it just felt so true. So I had to go through a process of surrendering to to the book that was seeking to be written, and surrendering to the book about surrender, and which was kind of an irony in a certain sense. And so when I really surrendered to the book, so much of the information began to make sense. And as I started to look at my life and my childhood and my upbringing and my parents and everything I had been through throughout my life that seemingly was random or didn't make sense, and some crazy experiences, everything began to click and fall into place. And I felt like everything had been preparing me to write this book about surrender and speak about surrender and sort of be a bridge to the new generation to make surrender accessible to the everyday person. And so much made sense. And as I look back, I realized that the seed of the book of surrender was planted a few years ago, because in 2016, the end, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And that was a really challenging moment for me. It was very difficult. My mother and I were very close. She was, you could say, my best friend, my biggest supporter. She raised me. She was my everything. And so it was really hard, but that took me on a profound journey of surrender. And I'm living in LA, and she was in London, and I started to fly back and forth between Los Angeles and London to be with her during her chemo sessions. Every month I'd be going back for a week, back and forth. And it was intense. And I had every intention to heal her, every intention to get her better, every intention to make her well with alternative therapies. And probably after 2 or 3 months, I think I kind of realized that nothing I do is going to work. No amount of prayer or meditate, like, she's going. That's kind of what I felt. And so I began a process of letting go and surrendering. And I remember giving up hope in the future. And I was open, but I just, like, I always had this hope that she was going to live. I remember just letting that go. And in that moment, all that was present for me was just being with her right now, this moment, right now. Like, every conversation was potentially the last conversation. Every time I was in chemo session could be the last time I saw her. There was no 5 years from now. There was just every time we sat to have a cup of tea was like, this is it, you know. All these things that I kind of took for granted or felt weren't even important, didn't make time for. It just became so sacred and precious. And I think the only regret I had in that moment was like, why the hell did I wait for so long until she was dying to really take in the sacredness and the preciousness and make time for these moments? And so there was a huge learning for me. And I remember 6 months into this process, I got to spend a year with her, which was a true honor and privilege. And what started out as the worst year of my life honestly turned out to be the best year. And on some level, I remember in the middle of this process, I looked at my mother and I said, this sounds so strange, but I want to thank cancer, because cancer, for some reason, I wish it didn't have to be this, but it woke me up to the sacredness of every moment of life and the ordinary moments that I'd taken for granted. And it gave me a whole nother level of relationship with my mother, a whole nother level of loving that it was just another dimension. And so the doctor said, look, we don't think there's anything else we can do for you. I'll never forget this moment in the hospital room. And they said, I don't think there's anything else we can do for you. So in a nice way, they said, you're going to die. So get your affairs in order. And maybe you have days, weeks, months, we don't know, but it's certainly not years. And it's a hard moment. Let me tell you that to really hear that's a very difficult moment, especially when you realize that the person you love the most will no longer be around. And I mean, it hit me hard, and there were tears streaming down my eyes. And we went into the car, and I think this is where the seed of the book was planted too. I looked my mother in the eyes and I said, "Mom, are you afraid? Like, this is it. Like, are you afraid?" And this Japanese woman, this is when I really got to know who she was. She looked me in the eyes and she said, "I'm not afraid, because I know that I'm not just this body. This body will die, but what I am is not this body. I'm a soul, and this body is just the temporary vehicle for my soul. And even when I'm gone, I'm going to be guiding you from the other side. So I'm not afraid." And she had such peace in her heart. And I looked her in the eyes because, like, I really realized this is it. She could go next week. And as I thought about my life without her, I wanted to be a good son. So I said, like, well, what can I do for you? Like, what do you need? What, do you want to go somewhere? What can I do for you to make your final days easier? You know, and I'm crying, and she was just calm as could be. She was a very emotional woman, but just completely at peace. And she said something really profound. She said, "There's nothing I need, and there's nothing I want. Only thing I want is what God wants from my life." That was it. And in that moment, I realized why she was so at peace. She was truly living surrender in such a profound way. She was truly surrendered. She wasn't mad. She wasn't angry. She didn't feel like a victim. She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was just open to the highest unfolding for her soul. And I think that was the real demonstration of surrender, not just on a mountaintop or in the Himalayas, but just in everyday, in a real everyday moment of life. And she demonstrated surrender for me, and it was so powerful. And so when I was looking at that whiteboard and I remembered all these moments, it hit me like, oh my, this is the gift that her soul was seeking to give me, to show me the power of surrender. And so I really believe that surrender is the most powerful thing that we can do. I really believe that surrender is the key to freedom, the password to freedom. I truly believe that surrender is the key to our next level. Surrender is the key to the real secret to manifestation. You know, in our culture today, we have this misconception that surrender is weak, that surrender is passive, that surrender means giving up, that surrender means waving the white flag, that if you surrender, you're going to be a victim, you're going to be a doormat, you're going to be taken advantage of, that you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires, you're going to get less in life. And I'm actually saying, no, what if you surrendered and you didn't get less, but you got more? Like more love, more joy, more in the sense of more than you could have planned and imagined with your conscious, limited ego mind. What if you got more beyond what you can expect, beyond your wildest dreams? And that's why I call the book The Magic of Surrender. Not the power, but the magic, because magic is that which is beyond, that which is more, that which is beyond what you can imagine with the limitation of your mind. And we all want magic in our life. Everybody wants more magic in their lives. But when I ask people, who wants more magic? All hands go up. Who wants to surrender? Very few hands go up. But the real formula for the magic is surrender. And the degree to which we get to experience the magic is in proportion to the degree to which we truly surrender. And so I think surrender is the key. Surrender, just to be clear, is when we let go of control, or I should say the illusion of control. The illusion, because it seems like we're in control, but I think the last couple of years have shown us maybe we're not as in control as we thought. So surrender is to let go of this illusion of control, control being the master addiction. The ego, what we perceive ourselves to be, wants to control and control and control everything, because we think that if we can control everything, then we'll be safe. We won't get hurt again like we were hurt when we were kids. And so surrender is to let go of control. Surrender is to let go of trying to force and manipulate life to fit our limited idea of how we think it should be, where we try to force relationships to be something that they're not. We try to force a goal to be something that it isn't. Surrender is to let go of the idea of who we think we should be and the life we think we should be living, so that we can be truly available and open and receptive to the authentic life that is seeking to happen, the authentic life that is seeking to express. And so surrender is when we take the limitations off of life And in that openness, that availability, that receptivity, that's when I think we're available to miracles and the infinite possibilities. And I think when I look at all the great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mandela, Mother Teresa, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, I mean, the list goes on, right? Whoever we think of as truly great, they all surrendered themselves at some point. They got to the point where they realized, wow, I need to surrender. And they surrendered themselves to life. They surrendered themselves to their souls. They surrendered themselves to the universe. They surrendered themselves to a purpose that was bigger than themselves. And in their surrender, they were able to transcend or go beyond their own, the limitations of their ego, the ego's limitations, and they tapped into another dimension of potential and possibility. And life was able to manifest through them and use them in ways that I think they couldn't have even imagined. And so I think surrender is that key. And so in the paradigm of surrender, I think the old paradigm, we ask ourselves, like, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? Get clarity on what you want. And I tell people, you might manifest what you thought you wanted, only to realize that what you thought you wanted is not what you really wanted. It's just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. We don't really question who is the I that wants. And many times our goals are projections of unmet needs from our childhood. We weren't loved, we weren't enough, we weren't, we were bullied, we felt insecure. So we feel if I can just achieve that thing, then I'm going to be enough. And nothing outside of us can truly make us feel enough if we don't feel that within ourselves. And so in surrender, the question that we ask ourselves isn't simply, what do I want? But it's a different question. I think it's an infinite question. And that question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to express through me? What is it the universe is seeking to express through me? What is it that my soul is seeking to express? What is the deepest impulse of what life is seeking to express through me? And really feeling what that is, feeling that impulse, feeling that authenticity, and feeling that, and then we can align ourselves with what's most true, what's most in integrity, what's most authentic, and then we can align our ego and our identity and our personality and our money, our resources, our marketing, our strategy. Then the ego serves the soul. Then we can align that, and then we can take action 100% in alignment with what's most true. And so surrender isn't being lazy, sitting there doing nothing. You might end up working harder than you ever worked, but you're working in alignment with what's true. And the key is when you take action, it's not about being attached. So surrender is taking action, giving 100%, but not being attached to the outcome, because sometimes we get so attached to the goal that we're not open to anything else. We're not open to what life is showing us. And sometimes the goal isn't really the goal. It's the, shall we say, it's the evolutionary carrot that takes us on the journey that causes us to evolve. And when we're so attached, we're not open and available. But when we're open and available and in surrender, we're open to allowing life to show us, life to lead us, life to guide us. And that might mean we go in a direction, but we're meant to go over here. But if we didn't go over there, we wouldn't even have the space to go over here and turn right. And so surrender is availability, surrender is openness, surrender is humility, surrender is letting life lead us. So that's kind of an overview of surrender.
Wow, Kute, there's so much information there. And what a beautiful story you shared about your mother's passing. Thank you very much for sharing that. My mother passed in February, and I was very much moved by that and how you incorporated that into your book and where that took you. Beautiful. And there's so much content there that you just shared with us. I want to break it down a little bit. Sure. And I want to kind of spotlight these different things that you talked about. So let's start a little bit with control and how our listeners can really release that control to fully surrender, to be able to hold, what wants to be expressed through us.
Yeah, I think control is a construct of the ego. And I think when we can understand the nature of the ego, it allows us to let go of control even more. Many times what we, I think, mistakenly do is we're like, okay, control, let go of control. Then we try to control the process of letting go of control. And in trying to control the process of letting go of control, the ego starts to resist even more. And so resistance is another form of control. But then when we resist the resistance, that's another layer of control. Now we're doubly stuck in control and we're not able to surrender. And so I think when we understand, just first and foremost, the nature of the ego, and we understand the nature of what it is, the mechanism that controls, it can start shifting a relationship to control. And so I just tell people, take the pressure off of yourself. You don't have to like let go of control, but you can start observing the pattern of control. And what controls is the ego. We often hear so many different schools of thought: get rid of the ego, annihilate the ego is the enemy. I like the ego is neutral. It's not good or bad. In fact, the ego is not a thing. The ego is simply a process of identification. Identification with name, with body, with form, with history, with memories, with trauma, with feelings, with experiences from the past that we tend to hold on to for a sense of me. And an ego is a process of identifying with all of that as me. And so the ego's job, so ego is a process of the identification, like a bicycle is a thing, pedaling is a process. So the degree to which we are identified is the degree to which we are in our ego, and determines the degree to which we control. And so what I would say is, ego is simply the vehicle that our soul uses to navigate in this human experience. So when we can understand what it is, it's a pattern, a construct that is conditioned in place. And the job of the ego is to reinforce its existence. And the job of the ego is to protect us and to prevent us from being hurt again, like we were hurt when we were children. When we understand this, it starts changing everything. Then we can relate to ourselves and the ego differently. When we relate to ourselves and the ego differently, then we can work with the control pattern differently. Then we can start letting go. And so as children, we weren't so ego driven. We were just being. As children, we weren't trying to control everything, especially when we were really young. Like you look into a child's eyes, a child is free. The child is in touch with the light. The child is in touch with the divine essence. They sing when they feel like singing. They dance when they feel like dancing. They don't care if they're not Bruno Mars. The child born naked, it doesn't really care how it looks like to anyone else or on Instagram. It's just, running naked, being what it's being and hugging you. It's just, a child isn't in such a paradigm of control, right? Because it's not conditioned yet. And so we're all, that's our true nature. So we're all born these free beings. We incarnate into the human existence. We meet our parents. Our parents are just doing the best that they can do based on their childhood, their upbringing, society, their grandparents, etc., etc. So they've been conditioned. Now we meet our parents, and maybe dad's an alcoholic, mom has mental health issues. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe there's abuse. Maybe there's trauma. Maybe there's dysfunction. Maybe they're great people, but they just don't know how to meet our emotional needs. And so it's painful. So two things happen in terms of how control starts to get formed. The first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, and not feel. We suppress our feelings, suppress the pain, suppress, because this way we don't have to feel the pain of what's going on around us in our environment. And before you know it, our true light, our true essence gets kind of hidden underneath the unfelt, unprocessed feelings that we've been burying for the last 10, 15, however many years. And so we also learn a strategy and a way of being, often unconsciously as children, we erect walls and we learn the strategy to not feel. And so we protect ourselves in certain ways. We hold tightly to this way of being, a defensive posture, defensive way of being, so that we don't have to feel that hurt again. And what worked for us when we were 5, what worked for us when we were 8, what worked for us when we were 15, now we're still doing the same closed, walls up, defensive way of being when we're 25 and when we're 35 and when we're 45. And so this way of holding on that we've learned to protect ourselves from getting hurt served us, but now no longer serves us, is a way that we have learned to control. And now we're holding on to this way. And so the ego's way of controlling becomes a survival mechanism with good intention. And so when we can understand that, it's like, wow, it's trying to protect me from never getting hurt ever again. And so, sure, now we fall in love, or we meet someone, we fall in love, we're like, oh my God, I love this person. Boom, our walls come up. Control, 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 control. Boom, we push the person away, and maybe we sabotage it. Maybe we even do something really stupid, something painful. Maybe we hurt the person, whatever it is. We screw up our goals. We push people away, not because we're bad people, not because we're even, I would say, control freaks. It's just the survival mechanism that's learned to keep us safe kicks in and wants to make sure we never get hurt again. And so when we can really understand our control and the pattern of control, which is ego, actually has a good intention. Its intention is positive. Its intention is compassionate. Its intention is trying to keep us safe in some way. When we can recognize that, we can maybe begin to shift our relationship with it. So for instance, we also learn as children, we go into the world and we look around and we learn the sense of, well, who do I need to be in order to get love, validation, and approval? Who do I need to be in order for my dad to love me? For me, preacher's kid, minister's son, miracle worker's son, I thought I had to be the independent one, the good son, the responsive one, the caretaker, love everybody, never get mad, never get angry, always be happy. This whole thing. And I had to suppress my humanity for so long. And so we all have roles and masks and personas that we learn to be. We contort ourselves into a certain shape of who we think we need to be, and we hold tightly to that way of being. We end up thinking that's who we are. But who we've become is not who we are. It's just the pattern and the program set of pattern and conditioning that we've learned to become in order to get love, validation, and approval. And so much of our way of controlling is a strategy of control to avoid pain, to never feel that pain again, and to get love, validation, and approval. And so the degree to which we're conditioned is the degree to which we're not free. And the degree to which we're not free is the degree to which we're just run by our past. And so when we can see ourselves for what we are, and then understand that this persona that we think we are, that we hold tightly onto, is not who we really are. It's a set pattern of conditioning that we've learned to become. And we are not, firstly, is realizing we're programmed. Secondly, is realizing you're not that programming. It's just a pattern of conditioning. Then we have to start becoming aware of the pattern of conditioning, because if you can become aware of the pattern of conditioning, and then because you understand the positive intention of control and the ego, then you are able to meet yourself with compassion. Then you're able to meet yourself with loving, so that when you go into some of these survival strategies and mechanisms, rather than judging yourself or beating yourself up or going, man, I read it in that book and the book said I shouldn't do this. And so what's wrong with me? I need to let go. I need to surrender now. Sometimes surrender is just understanding and observing that you're not surrendered right now. And you're in a pattern of control right now, and just meeting yourself with loving, and meeting yourself with compassion, and meeting yourself with empathy. Because what I found is, when you can meet yourself in that control pattern with some compassion and empathy and kindness, and when you can meet yourself with that kindness and empathy and compassion, that control pattern, which is often based on fear, right? We're afraid. And so that controlling aspect can often start to relax. And then surrender can start opening. So we can start letting go. And so how we work with the control is as important as the control. And so first we have to realize we're not our ego, we're not those patterns. Then meeting ourselves with love and compassion, allowing ourselves to feel and process and let go of some of the feelings that we've learned to suppress through controlling, then we can start opening again in a certain way. And so that's one thing I would say in terms of that. The other thing I would just, as a practical step that people can also take, is as a step towards surrender. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to surrender like it could be gentle. It can be gentle when you understand, like, wow, I can honor myself and honor my ego for the way it's tried to protect me. It did the best it knew how. And so I don't have to just blow the gates wide open, because that will often create too much fear. We can just gently love ourselves along the way. The other thing that we can do if we're stuck is, and I think one of the things I see that keeps people stuck, blocked, not breaking through, not going to that next level, not surrendering, are all the ways that we lie to ourselves as human beings in so many ways, because of the reasons I've expressed, to control, to keep ourselves safe. The ego doesn't want to change. It's preserving its identity to keep us safe. The ego wants everything and everyone else to change, but it doesn't want to change. It's like, I want you to change, you to change, you to change, but I'm not going to change, right? And so when we can understand that, I think a place to begin is realizing that one of the things that keeps us stuck are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. As human beings, we lie to ourselves. We stay in relationships that aren't working, and we stay in those relationships out of comfort, out of self-preservation, out of safety. We, work jobs and stay in careers that we know aren't aligned. They're not the true expression of our destiny, but we stay because it's safe. We stay because it's comfortable. And then we wonder why we feel pain inside. And so there is no real transformation without truth. And so I think where people can begin to surrender and just take a start in making a shift is asking yourself, what lies am I telling myself? Just straight up, what lies am I telling myself? And we have to be willing to be truly radically honest with ourselves. Like, what lies am I telling myself? What am I lying to myself about? Where am I not being real? Where am I not being in integrity? Where am I not being honest? How do I really feel about myself, about life, about my relationship, about whatever the subject is? So what lies am I telling myself? And I think we have to want the truth more than we want what we have, and we have to want the truth more than we want what we think we want. Because many times we have unconscious payoffs. We're often afraid of telling the truth because we're afraid of the consequence of what will happen in telling the truth. And so many times the ego, whose job is to preserve itself, keep you safe, will create a smokescreen of confusion. And it sounds like, well, I'm not really sure if this relationship is right for me. I don't really know. I'm confused. I don't really know what my purpose is. I'm not sure what my purpose is. And so we never end up expressing and living and putting ourselves out there, because that confusion, right, is a survival safety mechanism. Because if I'm confused and I don't know what my purpose is, then I never really have to take action. Then I never really have to put myself out there. I never really have to go for it and risk the potential failure. I can always stay in the safety and have the hope of the future fantasy and never have to make a change, right? And so I think, so the second question maybe people can ask themselves is something like, what am I pretending to not know? Because I think deep down, there's a part of us that knows everything, because at the deepest level, we're connected to everything. And so to me, there is no true transformation without truth. Truth is real spiritual practice. The truth will set you free. Truth is real meditation. Truth is real therapy. Truth is real, to me, truth is real religion. And I think when if there's one thing we're willing to do, is to start telling ourselves the truth. This is what I feel. That alone will begin to transform your life. That alone, like, things will start to shift and transform in ways you can't even imagine. What I would say is, as a addition, is just take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action. Because sometimes it's the fear of taking action that creates this ego's resistance and confusion. And so if you take the pressure off of yourself, like, okay, I don't have to take action. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to do as Kute says, which is tell myself the truth. So it might sound something like, I'm no longer in love with my spouse. Scary, but I don't have to take action. Because sometimes the fear of taking action is what causes us to, like, oh, I'm not really sure. No, I'm not in love anymore. That's the truth. I haven't been in love for 10 years. Just feel that. It starts a process inside. You don't have to divorce. You don't have to leave. You don't have to do anything. You can sit there with it for another 5 years, but just acknowledge the truth, because that starts the process of marinating inside. I hate my job. Okay, just be with that. You don't have to leave. Sometimes leaving sounds scary, so we're not honest with ourselves. I hate my job. I can continue, but I hate my job. But now I know, let me just be with that. And then it starts that process. So the third question becomes, what are the lies that you're telling yourself? What is it costing you? And when we lie to ourselves, it costs us. It is painful. It's meant to be painful. To me, the pain is a blessing. The pain is a friend. The pain is a gift. The pain is a messenger trying to show us where we are not in alignment. When we lie to ourselves, it's meant to be painful. It's not meant to feel good. Yet in our culture today, what we tend to do is we tend to distract ourselves from the pain. We drink it away, sex it away, drug it away, smoke it away, social media it away, whatever we need to do to not feel the pain of the lie. But that pain is a signal telling us you're lying to yourself. You're not being honest. You're betraying yourself. And that is a healthy thing. When you're not in alignment and you feel pain, it's like the alarm signal going off. And so I think we have to be willing to pay attention to what is the message of this pain, and then use that pain to course correct, use that pain to bring us back into alignment. And I think when we don't acknowledge the pain, it often manifests as some sort of emotional pain, like a depression, lack of aliveness, a lethargy, apathy. It manifests as maybe a temporary physical ailment, backache, shoulder ache, some temporary physical ailment where your unconscious is trying to communicate to you now. It might manifest as an ongoing physical disease, because if you're not owning that lie and that disconnect, then eventually it can manifest in your body. And so I think just beginning also by understanding the nature of the ego, being empathetic, but also just starting to tell the truth to yourself, begins the process of letting go of control.
Yeah, that's powerful, Kute.
Yeah.
So much valuable information. I know that our listeners and even myself, I'm going to have to go back and listen to it, because you just pack so much wisdom, into what you're saying, for people to go back and like step through, like release the control, just having the awareness of the control, so you can be able to let that go, to be able to move things through yourself, to be honest with yourself about what's going on in your life, so you can move forward. Right. And
Absolutely.
then that's freedom. There's freedom there. There's possibility there. Do you have some tips on breaking free from that past conditioning that holds us so tightly?
Yeah, I think it's what I just said, to be honest. I think everything I just said is the first step to take. And then being willing to, when you feel the pain, to allow yourselves to feel those feelings, knowing that all feelings remain present till fully felt, and no feeling lasts forever. And I think many times you can't truly heal without allowing yourself to feel and release the feelings that we've been suppressing. And so I think the more healing happens when we bring loving and compassion to those parts of ourselves that are hurting. And so I think just the recognition of acknowledging your pain and bringing loving and compassion to those parts of yourselves that are hurting is a huge, simple step, first step in the healing process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Because when we ignore those, like you said, earlier, it turns into other things in our life, even pain in our body. Yeah. Ignoring. How does this help us fulfill our full potential?
What do you mean?
Well, we've got all these tips. We're surrendering. So with surrender, there's also got to be action, right? So how do we fulfill or like step into the full potential of like who we are and be living our life's purpose?
Yeah, I think you just have to take action. I just tell people, go to just really move in the direction. You mentioned life purpose. I think so many of us, we don't fulfill our true full potential or life's purpose because we're so busy looking for it. We're so busy seeking it. We spend our whole life seeking our purpose rather than giving it or living it or gifting it right now. And so I would just tell people, stop seeking your life purpose. Stop seeking it. Sometimes the seeking takes you further away from it. You see, the ego wants to seek and seek and seek and seek and seek. That's what keeps the ego in existence. It loves to seek and never find. And because if it doesn't find, it can just keep seeking. And then you end up not giving and living your life purpose because you're on the sidelines trying to figure it out. So stop trying to figure out your life purpose, because often you'll never really figure it out from the sidelines and where you are now. When you stop trying to seek it, and I would just say, just go in the direction of what lights you up. Move in the direction of what turns you on. Move in the direction of what brings you joy. If you go in the direct, like, you don't have to know what your life purpose is in order to take action. You don't have to know what your life purpose is in order to live it. But if you just go in the direction of what turns you on, you go in the direction of what lights you up, you go in the direction of what brings you alive, you take a step. Like, you just take a step. When you take a step in the direction of, okay, this is what lights me up, this is what makes me most alive. When you take a step, what I found is life then reveals to you what's next. You take another step, life then reveals to you what's next. You take another step, life then reveals to you what's next. You take another step, and all of a sudden, maybe a few years later, you end up living into your life's purpose, living into it, not figuring it out, because you often won't be able to figure it out from the level of consciousness you are now. Every step you take on the journey, you learn and you grow and evolve. If you don't take that step because you're on the sideline trying to figure it out, not taking action, you won't become more, you won't learn more, you won't evolve more, you won't grow more. In every growth and evolution, you become more prepared and ready to be able to fulfill your ultimate life's purpose in this lifetime. So when you take a step, you take another step, take another step, life shows you more. So many times your life purpose won't necessarily be what you think it is. And when we try to just figure out our life purpose from the level of the mind and our current level of consciousness, what we project to be our life's purpose will often be a limited perception of what it really is. Many times, 5, 10 years from now, people end up telling me, I had no idea that this was what it would look like. I had no idea that this is what I would be doing. I thought it was this. And maybe it still has the seed of the intention, but sometimes the expression can be different and your purpose may evolve because you've evolved and you've grown. And so it's the journey that evolves you. And so here's 4 simple questions. Number 1, ask yourself what turns you on, what makes you alive, what brings you joy. Go in that direction, take a step. Number 2, ask yourself, what specific tangible skills do I have? Because you need specific skills. Like, I love Formula One racing, but the fact is I'm not going to be a Formula One driver in this lifetime. You know, these guys have been doing it since they were 3 years old. And so even though it's what I love, I don't have any skill at that. And so you got to ask yourself, what tangible skills do I have? And if you look back at everything you've been through, if you look back at all of the jobs you've had, and this is why it's important to take action, because many times people sit on the sidelines and say, well, I'm not going to take that job. I'm not going to go into that thing. I'm not going to do that thing because it's not my purpose and it's not what I'm here to do. But the fact is, sometimes that job that you did 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 5 years ago, and that may not be the ultimate thing you feel you're here to do, there might be something necessary that you need to learn there. There might be a specific skill that you need to learn that is going to be a valuable part of your purpose. And if you don't do that thing, if you didn't go into that job, if you didn't take that opportunity, you wouldn't have learned that skill. You wouldn't have learned SEO. You wouldn't have learned, time management. You wouldn't have learned marketing. You wouldn't have learned Facebook ads. Just fill in the blank. You wouldn't have learned sales. And even though that may not be your ultimate purpose, it's a piece of what's going to be necessary in the ingredients for you to be able to fulfill your purpose. Nelson Mandela had to go to prison for 27 years. Now, I'm sure he didn't want that. I'm sure that wasn't part of his plan, but we could say, should he have not spent that 27 years in prison? I'm going to propose that if he didn't spend that 27 years in prison, he probably wouldn't have gone as deep inside of himself to develop the compassion, the wisdom, the insight, the vision, the thinking, the empathy, the plan, and develop the soul force so that he would have such a level of forgiveness and compassion to come out that his heart and soul could move humanity in the way. And so maybe that 27 years was part of the necessary preparation for him to develop the skills. And so look at what tangible skills do I have? That is key in terms of living of your purpose. Number 3, also ask yourself, what unique gifts do I have and what unique problems am I able to solve? What unique gifts do I have and what problems am I able to solve? I always tell people, don't just focus on making money. Money is a function of adding value. You add value when you solve someone's specific pain, problem, or challenge. And money is just a transference of energy for solving someone's pain, problem, or challenge. And that's what it is to be of service. So when you focus on how can I be of service, what problems am I able to uniquely solve, and that, to me, money will then take care of itself when you're being of service by solving a pain, problem, or challenge. And so that's number 3. Number 4, ask yourself, what group of people do I feel a natural affinity to? What group of, like maybe you feel an affinity to teenage pregnant girls, maybe you feel an affinity to, the homeless, maybe you feel an affinity to the whales in the ocean, maybe you feel an affinity to the elderly. I believe we all have this kind of connection, soul connection with these particular groups, because that may point to the group of people you are here to be a contribution to? And so so those are 4 questions, but ultimately I would say, don't wait. Don't stop. You want to live your purpose? Stop waiting. Get into action. How to get into action? Just start responding to the need in the moment. Many times we have such a vision to I want to serve the world, I have this big purpose. I want to serve humanity. I want to serve the planet. That's great. But we're going to respond to the need in the moment and look around and just start being of service where you are with what you have, with those around you right now. There was a point in my life where I had such big visions to serve humanity. I had such big visions 20 years ago to serve the world. And I was kind of holding my breath to be able to do that. And I realized I have such a vision to impact humanity that I'm not helping anyone around me right now. My life was on hold. My purpose was on hold. So in that moment, I felt so embarrassed. I felt so humbled. And I thought, every day I see this, let's say 80-year-old grandma outside of my house struggling to carry the groceries. And I'm sitting here thinking about the big vision, all the people I want to help. What if I just started by carrying her groceries every morning at 8 a.m.? Let me just start there, being of service now. And so respond to the need in the moment, because if you want 100, you have to manage 10. If you want 1,000,000, you've got to manage 10,000. And so many times we want to impact 1,000,000, but we're not impacting 1. So start with the 1, life gives you 10. Start with 10, life gives you 100. Start with 100, life gives you more. And then each step of the way, you become more prepared and ready to serve more and live more. And I think that's how success is built.
I love that, Kute. Thank you for sharing that. I love those, excuse me, I love those 4 steps that you just gave. I really do. So is there a jewel of wisdom that you would like to wrap us up with today?
I think there's many things I could say. Just one simple thing to keep it short would be just remember that you're going to die. That's it. Wow. I think that will be pretty sobering. You're going to die, and it's not in a somber way or morbidly, but I hope as you hear that statement, it wakes you up and inspires you out of a slumber and inspires you to realize that life is short. At least this lifetime as we know it is short, and we don't know when that moment will come, when we meet our maker. And so if death came right now, would you be ready? And if not, why not? And what's unsaid, what's ungiven, what's unexpressed? Because when we die and we meet our maker, we can't go to God and say, can I get a refund on those 2 years I wasted in that relationship? Or can I get a refund on those 5 years I wasted in that job I hated? It's gone, it's gone. And so how would you need to live your life so that you have no regrets? What do you need to say? What's unexpressed? What's ungiven? What's uncommunicated? What's not forgiven? To me, tomorrow is not a right, it's a precious gift. And so how would you need to live to have no regrets? And so feel your death, meditate on your death. Remember that. I just was notified yesterday that one of my dear friends' exes had a heart attack, healthy guy, stud of a man, full of life, incredible wealth. Just like that, died in his sleep, gone. He thought, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, boom. And so this is it right here. Feel your death, and let that inspire you to live as fully right now.
Well said, Kute. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And how can people work with you? And do you have anything coming up that you would like to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, there's a free 5-day virtual event coming up on July the 12th. It's free, so people can register. Just enter your name and your email, spread the word to your friends. It's called the Surrender Summit. And so it's going to be 5 days of helping people learn the keys to surrendering. It's going to be super inspiring. I'm going to be teaching in the summit every day. I've also invited 20 of my friends, people like Neil Donald Walsh of Conversations with God, John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Barbara DeAngelis, Martha Beck, John D. Martini, Marcy Shimoff, Mike Dooley. I mean, an amazing list of visionary teachers from around the world in spirituality and personal development. So www.thesurrendersummit.com, register for free. My main website, Kute Blackson, find me there. Get the Magic of Surrender book. It's available on paperback. Get the paperback version on Amazon. If people feel like working with me, if they felt inspired by the conversation, I would say there's a 12-day event I do in Bali every this July, and every December. It's 12 days. It's unlike anything. It's a deep dive, immersion, experiential seminar training without walls. It's called Boundless Bliss, www.boundlessblissbali.com. You can check it out there, and Instagram and Facebook. Just Google my name, Kute Blackson.
Awesome, Kute. Thank you. That's fantastic. And what a lineup for your summit. You must be so excited.
It's great.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's great. See you there.
Cool. Yes. Yes, you will. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kute. It's been a pleasure to host you. Okay. And thank you everyone for joining me. Again, this is Raise the Vibe with Liz, and I'm your host, Liz Peterson. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Raise the Vibe with Liz. And my website is lizshealingtouch.com. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Have a great day. Bye.